Hey Carmen, Cindy, and Mary Ellen. I wanted to take a moment to make my video response to this module and to also talk about our work together yesterday in class. And definitely I wanted to thank you all too for our work together in class. I found it very, very beneficial and interesting, and I really feel like it's going to help me with the remainder of the project for this class. So I really appreciated your efforts and energies in working together yesterday. That was really beneficial. So for today's video though, I'd like to go ahead and respond to everybody's video that you posted to the discussion board, and then I'd like to comment just a little bit about our work together in class yesterday. So before I break it down into individuals videos, first there were some general things about everybody's video that kind of stood out. And the first one was that everybody's population seemed to be driven by social emotional forces, and there seemed to be a heavier emphasis on that than on the cognitive side of things for a lot of the populations that we're particularly looking at amongst the four of us. And I found that to be very interesting. I've also found this to be a consistent trend, I guess you could say, throughout this semester as I've looked between both of the classes that we're in at the populations and a lot of the research I've been reading. And so I've just become very interested in that how important of an aspect that is, and maybe we don't pay it enough attention sometimes as leaders in higher ed. We spend so much time focusing on the cognitive and the curriculum and that aspect, and we do not spend a lot of time focusing on students' social and emotional growth and development and well-being. So again, this just really hit it home one more time, as if I needed it one more time, but I did, apparently. And then I also thought that everybody mostly found that their frameworks were accurate. So I thought that was interesting too. So for most of us, I think doing the framework analysis was a new thing. So for the framework analysis to be a home run that's pretty good. So individually now, Mary Ellen, your video regarding your work with single moms, I found it really interesting that your interview had to be rescheduled, the second one, and I thought that that just spoke volumes and was so telling of the population. That was probably very typical of what these students have to face regularly with their multiple demand roles that they have. And I said that backwards, multiple role demands. And so I thought that was very interesting in your video when you talked about that. And another thing that really kind of caught my attention was also when you talked about how emotional the interviews became for several of them. And I know this is kind of jumping a little bit, but yesterday when we talked in person, you said several of them mentioned that they really hadn't had the opportunity to talk to very many people about it. And there's not very often that they're with other people that are in their same situation. And that, of course, is what made it very emotional for them. And I thought about it again, that ties back to that social emotional piece, and that's what was missing. And so, anyways, just really that's what stuck out to me about yours, and what an emotionally tied topic that is for so many of today's college students. Carmen, your non-traditional students, of course, I found it very interesting that 4 out of 5 of the students that you interviewed were also underprepared students, since that's my population, and that they'd required developmental education. And then also it sounded like your students also had the multiple role demand going on as well. So again, there's another theme that I'm hearing across our student populations. And then also the determination and drive that you mentioned, and Mary Ellen had mentioned that as well. So again, a common theme that I'm hearing one more time. So I'm hearing these common themes, which will come up again, of course, as we get to yesterday's conversation. And then Cindy, your Latino fathers, they're improving their world, they're building their self-esteem and their self-efficacy. And I really was intrigued by your customer loyalty framework, and especially after our study of for-profit institutions. For some reason, when I was listening to your video and listening to that particular part, that's what came to mind. I can't really connect all those dots for where my crazy mind goes some days, but that's where it went. So now to kind of go into yesterday's session where we got to work together, which I found to be, as I said earlier, so extremely beneficial. But one thing that I wanted to mention was as we all took our coding, and even though we had different words when we started out, as we began to get them into themes instead of specific codes, it was the coolest thing ever, for lack of good words. But it was the coolest thing ever that as we got them from the codes to the themes, that we could all use the same themes basically, just about. I mean, there were some uniquenesses, especially for Cindy when it came to the Hispanic fathers, and then I think I was the only one that didn't have a unique one that was just to me, which kind of makes sense though if you think about it, because most of your populations may or may not, because a single mom doesn't necessarily have to be underprepared, but many of your people in your populations are also going to be underprepared. So you might have had something unique beyond what I had, but that that was just, it kind of tied it all together. So that was really neat. So I really enjoyed the common themes that we came up with. And going back to what I originally said in the very beginning of this video post with the social emotional aspects of things, as I look at the common themes that we came up with, and I can't remember which ones are common to who, so I'm just looking at the ones that we wrote down. I wrote down for myself, which were academic barriers, motivation, challenges to success, and emotional responses. And when I look at those, I go, okay, they're split down the middle. Two are cognitive, two are social emotional. So then that tells me, as leaders, as people who are in educational leadership, are we spending 50% of our time focused on students' social emotional well-being as much as we're spending on their cognitive well-being? So I kind of looked at that as a really good challenge to myself, and realizing that that's one aspect of today's college student that we probably, at least I know I don't think I spend enough time focusing on. So I thought I was, but I definitely wasn't spending 50% of my time, or 50% of the effort. So thank you all again so much. I look forward to watching your videos as well, and I look forward to our continued work together.